I'm looking at Mark chapter 15, finishing off the preaching, going through the Gospel of Mark. But first, did I tell you that it's Potluck Sunday? You know, you all know about it, yeah? Did you get enough emails? Yeah? Okay. I want to look at the story of David and, is it Michael or Michael? Michael? Yeah, okay. Girls can be called Michael. Okay, so Michael, Saul is really upset because King David is, you know, the ladies are singing, Saul has killed his hundreds, but David has killed his thousands. And the evil spirit is starting to come upon Saul, and he's getting real jealous because everybody likes King David and not him. So he kind of offered his first daughter, but David said, well, who am I? So Saul says, okay, you're right, you're not, so I'll give her to somebody else. And he gave her to somebody else. That was his first daughter. But then he saw his second daughter, and his second daughter in 1 Samuel chapter 18, 20, she loved David. Like, she had this love for him. And I think it's more of a worldly love and attraction to him, right? And so Saul goes, yeah, I can use this situation and I can get David killed. So he's going to use that, and he's going to say to his guys, okay, tell everybody 100 foreskins of the Philistines, and Michael is your wife. Put it out there. Just tell them that's the dowry. So David goes, oh, I can marry his second daughter. So David goes out and gets 200 foreskins of the Philistines and then pays off Saul. Saul's thinking David's going to die trying to kill 200 Philistines, but, well, that didn't work. So David gets Michal. He still has a hate on for David. And then she hears about it, that Saul's sending guys to kill David, and she tells David, and he doesn't really believe, and then she finally convinces him, just get out of the house, you know, just run away for a little bit and find out for yourself. And so, sure enough, Saul comes to get David, and she puts a fake body in the bed, you know, an idol with some hair, and the guys take that up. And so Saul's really upset with his daughter, and David flees, and now David's on the run from King Saul, and he's separated from Michal. And then while David's running, Saul thought, oh, I'll just get even. I'll give my daughter away. So he gives Michal to this other guy, and now she gets married to this other guy. And then time goes on, and Saul gets beaten, defeated in battle. And now David becomes the next king, right? And right there in 2 Samuel, David, one of his first things he's going to do is he's going to say, I want my wife back, right? So he sends these guys, gets his wife back, and now she's living with him. So they drag her away from her second husband, and he's crying and all of that kind of stuff. It's kind of an interesting situation. But now she's back with King David, and you really don't know how that relationship is running. But it kind of shows in 2 Samuel. So she's more on a physical basis with God and with David and with this relationship. And we kind of see it in 2 Samuel. Because David, his heart is he's after God's own heart. And so David gets the opportunity. God says, you're not going to build the temple, but I'll let you take the Ark of the Covenant and bring it into Jerusalem. And so the first time he kind of messed up with that lesson with Uriah the Hittite. But the second time they started to bring it in, what David did was always have a sacrifice every such a distance. David would have a sacrifice, and he danced in front of everybody. And he danced because he was so happy that the Ark of the Covenant was coming in. He had that kind of a relationship with God, right? And Michal watched from a distance, and she just hated him. And the more he danced, and the more she hated him. It's almost like she was jealous of that relationship that he had with God and bringing that tabernacle in. And it was just driving her crazy. I guess it's in chapter 6, verse 16. And then it happened as the Lord came into the city of David, that Michal the daughter looked out the window and saw David dancing before the Lord, and she despised him in her heart. And so then she gives him a really hard time in verse 20 when David returned to bless his household. So he's super happy, and he walks into the house of his wife to greet her. And Michal, the daughter of Saul, came out to meet David and said, "How the king of Israel distinguished himself today. He uncovered himself today in the eyes of the servants' maids, as one of the foolish ones shamelessly uncovers himself." And David said, "It was before the Lord who chose me above your father and above all his house to appoint me ruler of the people of the Lord over Israel. Therefore I will celebrate before the Lord, and I will be more lightly esteemed than this, and be humbled in my own eyes. But with the maids of whom you have spoken, with them I will be distinguished." So you look down upon me, you mock me, is what he's saying to her. But all the maids of Jerusalem, I will be distinguished. Why? Because they have that relationship with God. They look up to God, and they understood why David was dancing. And Michal totally misunderstood the whole thing. And how does the chapter end? Michal, the daughter of Saul, had no child to the day of her death, for the rest of her life. She never had a child. And the lesson you need to learn here is, if you mock, right, that kills love. Any sort of mocking. Never mock your spouse, because as soon as you do, that just puts a knife right into the heart. It just killed David and Michal's relationship. Right there. That's it. It's over. No kids for Michal. Right? So how do you deal with this thing called being mocked? Because that's a warning to husbands and wives, but you'll get friends that'll mock you, and you'll get enemies that'll mock. How do you deal with being mocked? Because there are mockers out there, right? Well, Joshua. And now the story about Joshua is really interesting. I'm turning to Deuteronomy chapter 31, because Joshua is best of buds. Everybody knows Joshua and Moses are best of buds, right? And Joshua is about to become the new leader. Well, everybody was tired of Moses, and everybody had this, Moses, we're going to go into the promised land. Moses isn't coming. So who's going to be the next leader? Well, it's going to be Joshua. But most people, when they want to get a new president or a new prime minister or a new whatever, they want to have something fresh. They don't want to have his second in command. Because if they have his second in, they go, "Oh man, couldn't we get a totally different leader?" No, you're getting Joshua. So Joshua, you have to understand, is going to get mocked, right? Because nobody's really caring about Joshua in that situation. So he needs something. So what does God say? God first gives this advice to all the people. Be strong and courageous. This is the first time we find that word in the scriptures. Courage. Be strong and courageous. Do not be afraid or tremble at the people of the land that you're going into. For the Lord your God is one who goes before you and will not fail you or forsake you. So that's what Moses says to the people. You got to be strong and courageous. And then before all the people that are present, he turns to Joshua and says to Joshua, in the sight of all, be strong and courageous. For you shall go with this people into the land which God has sworn. And then over in verse 23, then he commissioned Joshua, because now it's time for Joshua to take over. Be strong and courageous. Like, that is the thing you have to be, is strong and courageous if you're going to take on the mocking. And then you look at the book of Joshua, and then what do we find in Joshua? Is that the angel of the... I didn't even look... Angel of the Lord to Joshua, be strong and courageous. Verse 6, for you shall give this people the possession of the land. Verse 7, be strong and very courageous, careful to do according to all the law. And then drop down to verse 9, Have I not commanded you? Be strong and courageous. Do not tremble or be dismayed. And just to seal the deal, verse 16, anyone who rebels against your command, Joshua, and does not obey your words in all that you command shall be put to death. Be strong and courageous. If anybody disobeys you, Joshua, you put him to death. If you're going to be doing that, you've got to be strong and courageous. Like, I've been kind of putting it out there that there's a fellowship lunch, this, right? And I'm putting it out there. That's what God's doing here. Putting it out there. Joshua, this has got to sink into your mind. You've got to be strong and you've got to be courageous, right? Courageous is the attitude of dealing with anything recognized as dangerous or difficult. If it's dangerous or difficult, you've got to stand up to it, right? You've got to deal with it instead of withdraw, because we have a tendency to withdraw. Oh, I'll take care of it later. We have a tendency to withdraw. We do not like confrontation. One of my biggest problems is I hate confrontation, right? Let God deal with it. God's saying, no. Be strong and be courageous. Deal with this situation. Don't be withdrawing from this situation. Aristotle said, courage. Courage is the first of human qualities because it is the quality that guarantees all the others. If you don't have courage, you're not going to get all of those other qualities. You've got to have courage. You've got to deal with things that come before you. You'll get through it. Don't worry about it. And so what do we find in Mark chapter 15? This is Jesus' last day alive on earth. Here he is coming up to the cross. He's prepared to open his arms wide and to die on the cross because he loves us. In this chapter, he exemplifies the greatest act of courage ever seen to overcome mockery. Because the biggest thing that jumps out at you here in Mark chapter 15 is mockery. And Jesus is going to take great courage and he's going to beat this thing called mockery. And that's the lesson we're picking up this morning. You divide the chapter into three little groups. Jesus demonstrates courage. Jesus to stand up to mockery. Jesus demonstrates courage to endure mockery, and he demonstrates courage to ignore mockery. And that's what we need to do. I mean, early in the morning, start verse 1, here comes the elders. And they're putting their plea before Pilate, and they're telling him these things. And then Pilate questions Jesus, are you the king of the Jews? Because that's what everybody's telling Pilate. And Jesus says, well, you say. Yeah, you're right. And then the chief priests begin to accuse him harshly. Pilate questioned him again, saying, do you not understand? Look at how many charges they're bringing against you. But all those charges are false charges. They're all mocking Jesus and throwing this at him and throwing that at him. The biggest mock is to call him the king of the Jews to Pilate. And now Pilate's, but Jesus doesn't say a word. You cannot address a fool in his folly. You cannot address a mocker, right? And this is how to stand up to the mocking that's in front of him. And then Pilate's got, okay, well, I can release somebody. Well, let me release Barabbas for you. And all the chief priests. It's interesting in verse 11, they stirred up the crowd. They incited the crowd. You got to think about this. This is not just a normal crowd. This is a bunch of people they got together on this Friday morning. These guys are paid agitators. And the Jews just need to turn a look at these guys and go, no, we want Barabbas. And then they start screaming, Barabbas, Barabbas. They're just paid guys, right? But it's the Jews. So the whole show is a mockery of what's going on here. And Pilate understood. Why? What evil has he done? He says in verse 14. And they shouted all the more, crucify, crucify. And wishing to satisfy, he releases Barabbas and then scourges Jesus and hands him over to be crucified, right? But he knew, I skipped that verse 10. He knew, he was aware the chief priest had handed him over because of envy, because of jealousy. He knew that was the only, he could see through their mockery. But Jesus going, if they're mocking, there's nothing you can do, right? Have great courage. We're going to go through this. Jesus was aware of what was going on. I'm just going to quickly turn to John chapter 19. And last week we were talking about how to transform yourself, how to transform your mind. And to transform your mind, it was about awareness, acceptance, and no resistance. And I was saying, I need to find another A, because I hate this no resistance. Well, no resistance is a negative, and awareness and acceptance is a positive. So I want a third positive. So the word I've come up with is activation, or activate, right? Become aware of the situation through the scriptures. Accept that which the scriptures have told you. And now get active. Put it into practice. Activate yourself. Don't be just sitting there. So don't worry about that no resistance stuff. It's all about activation. And there's 3 positive things. If you're going to change your mind, if you're going to transform, no longer being like the world, being conformed, to be transformed, you've got to learn to activate, right? And that's what we see with Jesus here. I won't jump. I'm jumping to where? John chapter 19, verse 10. Where Jesus is standing before Pilate. And this is great. Pilate says to him, "You do not speak to me? Do you not know I have authority to release you, and I have authority to crucify you?" And Jesus said, "You would have no authority over me unless it had been given to you from above. For this reason, he who delivered me to you has the greater sin." Pilate, you're just another cog in the wheel. It's prophesied about my death. It's prophesied about the crucifixion. You're just there because God has put you there, and this thing is going to run its course. So Jesus, when he came into Pilate's praetorium, knew exactly what was going to happen. He knows he's going to his death. He's fully aware of how this day is going, right? So awareness is so important. And how does Jesus know? Because Jesus read the scriptures. He knows everything in the Old Testament is prophesying the things that are going to happen to him. How do you know what's going on in this world? Get into the Bible, and it tells us what's going to happen. Evil's going to continue to increase. Don't be surprised when things happen, right? The Bible's not telling you individually what's going to take place. But it does say this is the world's getting darker. It's not getting brighter. Jesus questions, will I find faith when I return? Well, the best thing we can do is continue in the faith. Continue to study the scriptures so that we're aware of the situation, right? We can see things happening and go, don't worry about it. Do you understand what's going to happen on the judgment day? Well, it teaches us in the scriptures. We're studying it Wednesday night, Revelation chapter 20. The more you study, the more you're aware so that little things will not upset you. And the more you're aware, the more power you have and the greater the obedience to the Word of God. Point number 2, Jesus demonstrates courage to endure mockery. And now he's in private. Now this part's really interesting. Because not only is he scourged, and in his scourging, he doesn't cry out. Because he doesn't respond, because people who have hatred want you to respond in hatred, right? If they want to start yelling, do not yell back. Just sit there. Either be calm and ask them to calm down, or just simply say, I gotta go. I gotta walk away from this thing, and learn to walk away. But don't get into that fighting thing, because raised voices absolutely accomplishes nothing. It's only what they want, and they get excited about that. And now you're just feeding into them. Jesus didn't feed into them. And all those Roman soldiers are really upset because there's 2 lictors, one on either side, that are giving him the scourging. And those 2 lictors couldn't get him to cry out. Well, we'll teach you a lesson. So what do we see in Mark 15? They take him into the palace, the praetorium, and called together the whole Roman cohort. We're going to teach this little Jewish lad. We're going to teach him. They dressed him up in purple, twisting a crown of thorns, put it on his head, and then acclaimed, "Hail, King of the Jews." Now here comes the mocking, right? You're dressed in royalty. You've got your crown. And they began beating his head with a reed, spitting on him, kneeling, bowing before him. You have to understand that reed pounding on his head. If you've ever had, like, olive trees. When I was down in Denver studying at school, they had olive trees all around, and then the driveway parking lot was raised up, and then you went down, and then these were all olive trees, right? And then they grew up so much they were coming in, and you couldn't park very close because olives got, like, thorns are 2-3 inches long. You just scrape up against one of those, you know it. It'll just put a cut if it doesn't poke you. And if it pokes you, it's sore for 3 or 4 days because it's like a poison goes in, right? It takes a long time to heal. And so they take this crown of thorns. You got to be really gentle when you weave a crown of thorns because it's poking and prodding you, right? And then put it on his head and then take it and start driving it in because it's going right into bone, right? And it's digging into bone as they keep teasing him, right? And keep mocking him, right? But Jesus didn't cry out. In other Gospels, they were, just throwing punches. Come on, you take a turn. You take a turn. We're going to break this little guy. But none of them could break him, right? So after they took the purple robe off him, led him out to crucify him. And then Simon of Cyrene they pressed him into carrying the cross. Why? Because Jesus was his body was so devastated from the scourging. So he still had to go out. And it sounds like the crown was still upon his head. And if you've ever had, I took a 3.5-inch spike and I put it right through my forearm, which was really cool, eh? It took a lot of skill. Well, it doesn't take a lot of skill. If you have a nailing gun, all you got to do is go punch, and it puts it right through, buries it right to the head, and it's through the bone. And so my boss was going to pull it with the hammer, and I'm kind of looking at it, and every move of my hand, you can feel it just wah, right? And so to the hospital, they give you a little painkiller, but they take pliers and they just rip it out of there. But on the way to the hospital, like it was a half hour to the hospital, every bump on the way, this thing went wah, 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 because you got that. And it's just, how many thorns are in his head? And every step on the way is going to just get exaggerated, right? It just, you can't imagine. Not to mention he had the crossbar, a cross tied to that, and every time he tripped and fell, he does a face plant. He's got the crown of thorns, drag him up, realized he can't do this anymore, so they give it to Simon. And so he's lucky enough to walk all the way with the crown of thorns, right? Why? Because he loves us so much. It's that love for us that he endures the mockery, and he doesn't let these guys break him. So when he gets to the cross, now they put him up on the cross after they nail him on the ground, put the crossbar up on the stipes, which is the straight up, push up his feet, right? And then at his feet, it was the 3rd hour when they crucified him, and the inscription above him, King of the Jews, and then 2 robbers on either side. And what did they do at the bottom? They gambled for his clothes. And that's the thing you have to think about. Why did they gamble for his clothes? Because to the Romans, the power was in the clothes. If we could get my hands on that robe, right? His power is there. And that's why they were very intense to get the clothes of a young Jewish guy. The robe's not there, but his clothes, because he's up there naked, right? For all the world to mock. But he accepted the fact that he has to be crucified. He knew Isaiah chapter 53, fully accepted that I know. And he was like 10 years old when he knew that what? I'm the Messiah. I'm the one that's going to the cross. Isaiah 53:7. He was oppressed and he was afflicted. He did not open his mouth, like a lamb led to slaughter, like a sheep that is silent before its shearers. He did not open his mouth. Totally quiet. Took it all in. Right? That's how you endure mockery. Great courage. But full acceptance of what God has said. And I think what even comes out higher and greater in all of this is that little word called love. Because he loved us, he fulfilled the scriptures, went to the cross. And then lastly, 29 to 41, Jesus demonstrates courage. He ignores the mockery because now he's up there in public. Verse 29, those guys that are walking by, hurling abuse at him, wagging their head. Ha! You who are going to destroy the temple and rebuild it in 3 days. Save yourself. Come on down. Same way, chief priests, along with the scribes, mocking him, among others saying, he saved others, he can't save himself. Let this Christ, King of Israel, now come down from the cross so that we may see and believe. And those who were crucified with him, both of those robbers, were what? Also insulting him, hurling abuse at him. So he's getting it from these two guys. He's getting it from the public. He's getting it from the chief priests. And what does he have the ability to do? Matthew chapter 26, verse 53. Because there is this thing called the breaking, right? Finally you're going to break. And if you have an opportunity to escape, what do you think? Wouldn't you escape? Jesus says, do you not think I cannot appeal to my Father? He will at once put at my disposal more than 12 legions of angels. I can have 12,000 angels and I'm out of here. But he knows he had to die. So he's so full of love, he's going to endure the mocking because he knows there's something greater. There's always something greater. Even after everyone took their turns. And even after, was it the guy on the right or the guy on the left? Well, it has to be the right, right? The left, no, sorry. So the guy on the right says, remember me. And you were just mocking me. What are you talking about? No, remember me when you come in your kingdom. Because he's repenting of his sin, of doing all of that. And Jesus says, today, you'll be with me in paradise. Jesus knew exactly where he was going and who he was. And he was coming with him. Right? You got to learn to stand up to mockery. It takes great courage. You got to learn to endure mockery, and you got to learn to ignore it. You got to have the attitude of Christ, Father, forgive. They know not what they do. When people mock you, they know not what they do. Because who are you? You're a child of God, and you have the understanding, the insight for them to save their souls. And yet they're going to mock you? You don't yell back. You just want to cry out for them. And in Mark, every chapter has a good response, a correct response. What's the correct response? Joseph of Arimathea. When it became Joseph of Arimathea, verse 43, became a prominent member of the council. He's of the Sanhedrin. He was waiting for the kingdom of God. He knew this was the time. He knew about the preaching of John. He knew about the preaching of Jesus. The kingdom of heaven is at hand. And yet we have so many churches running around saying, kingdom of heaven is coming. It's coming. No, the kingdom of heaven's at hand. Right? No. Jesus failed. Next time he comes back, then we're going to live here for 1,000 years. No. They're so mistaken. Because they want to have a physical kingdom. And that's what the Jews wanted. It's not about a physical, it's a spiritual kingdom. So that we can go off to something a whole lot better. Notice, underlying this. So here comes Joseph. If he does anything, he's fired. No longer in the Sanhedrin. He's going to be what? He's going to be mocked. So what does he do? He gathers up courage. I got to do this thing. He's fully aware of the whole situation. He understands this. And what does he do? Goes to the praetorium once again. Because he was probably there when they took Jesus there, because the whole Sanhedrin and the mob, right? He would have been there. He goes in before Pilate and he asks for the body of Jesus. Now that's going to just spread like wildfire. You what? You want who? Why? Right? Pilate was wondering if he was dead by this time. Summoning the centurion, he questioned him as to whether he was already dead. And ascertaining this, he granted the body to Joseph. So Joseph asked for the body in court, and then in private, first part of chapter 46 or verse 46, he took him down and wrapped him in a linen. He took him down from the cross, Joseph. Now he's in private, and he takes the body down. Now you need to understand, if he's a part of the Sanhedrin, he is super rich, okay? Like these are the richest guys as far as the Jews are concerned. Anybody that's involved with that. And he's got 5 or 6 guys, and he can hire 5 or 6 guys. So he's got lots of help. He's responsible. But you're going to have a bunch of guys to help bring the body down. And this part, I just want you to have this in your mind, because this part I just love about the American military. You know, it just brings brings tears to the eyes. So I better be careful what I say. But they have a flag ceremony for soldiers that come back, right? The coffin is always draped, and they treat the dead with so much respect. And then they do the flag folding. The flag does not touch the ground, and everything's snapped. Everything is precision. And then they present the flag to the wife or to the family, right? And your tears just, right? Little kids, don't go there, right? So when they took the body down, this is what I want you to imagine. He'd have 4 or 5 guys. The body doesn't go down and touch the earth. They hold that body, and they'll carry it away a little ways. And then they bind it. They wrap it. It's not just one cloth. They wrap it. Nicodemus brought 100 pounds worth of myrrh and spices, and they prepared the body by simply holding it while somebody would take the time to wrap it. And if you held the body up, you could wrap the body rather rapidly, right? And we see there's grave clothes there. But it's that quiet, and it's a very private time. And the only people that were there, the ladies on the hill, watching these guys prepare the body. And then they placed him in the tomb and rolled the stone. That was Joseph's. It was Joseph's own tomb. Not recorded here, but it's recorded in other places. Joseph's own tomb he put Jesus in and was there to help roll the stone, right? Everybody knows whose tomb that was. Everybody knows. Joseph is right out there, but Joseph is ready for any sort of mocking that's going to come at him from the Jews. Why? Because he's got incredible courage, and he's got incredible love in his heart. So I guess you need to have that courage to pull that love to be able to do what you really need to do when the time is right. And Joseph sets that incredible example. I got to put myself aside when it comes to the kind of love, the kind of respect I owe my Lord and Savior. And that's what Jesus sets the example of. And Joseph, that's what it just screams at. Be careful of mockery. Mockery kills love. You got to get past that. You got to pick up that strength and courage to be able to be the person you are. And the last verse I'll leave us with is 2 Timothy 1:7. God has not given us a spirit of timidity. Timidity is the absolute opposite of courage. Timidity is lacking confidence and boldness. because timidity doesn't have awareness of the situation. When you have full awareness, then you have full confidence. And timidity, if you don't have awareness, then you can't have acceptance and you can't have activation. But what does he say we have? God hasn't given us the spirit of timidity, but he has given us the power and love and discipline. Power is the understanding of the scriptures. I'm not ashamed of the gospel. It's the power of God. So I've been given that full awareness. He's also given us love to accept that which we see in the scriptures. And then he says discipline, but I look it up and it's actually not, I don't like that word discipline. It kind of sounds like penalty or something to me, because I grew up being punished because I wasn't the greatest. But it's not discipline as much as it is exercise. And exercise to me is more put it into practice. To me, it's activation. He gave us a spirit of power, love, and exercise. And when you can accomplish that, you can do absolutely anything, because you're in that process with what we call transformation. And Jesus teaches us how to accomplish it because he set an example. And an incredible example here in chapter 15 of what he calls us to accomplish with our lives. And that's the message I'll leave with you this morning. God bless.